How to play fingerstyle or fingerpicking guitar. Book 2, Lesson 2. How to play If by Pink Floyd. If you're new to this channel, this lesson is part of a complete fingerstyle guitar course. And if you need the tablature, you can get the PDF completely free at www.ebooks4guitar.com. And to catch up with all the previous lessons, there's a link down below in the description to Book 1 and Book 2 of the Fingerstyle guitar course. This lesson is going to be relatively short compared to last week's lesson, and that's because the tune's only got a few lines of tab. However, you may still need to practice as much as you practiced last week, or possibly more, because this tune's got some pretty difficult chord changes in it. As we usually do, let's take an overview of the complete tune. And the first thing I'll point out is the repeat symbol at the end of the fourth line. And this goes back to the first line, meaning you repeat all 4 lines. And looking underneath the repeat symbol, you can see it says to repeat the 4 lines 8 times. Now, that's only really necessary if you're playing along with the original, or if you want the original lyrics to fit. Another thing I'll point out is that the tune is 4/4 time, and the fingerpicking pattern contains 8 notes. So it repeats to the primary and index finger. And the fingerpicking pattern has 8 notes in it, which means it's continuous in quavers or in half beats. The only place the fingerpicking pattern and the rhythm changes slightly is in the 4th line, where the last note isn't played to give you a little extra time to change the chords. To make the song easier to learn, I've broken it down into 4 exercises. So let's take a look at those. Exercise 1. The fingerpicking pattern. For this exercise, we're just going to try playing the fingerpicking pattern just using a partial E chord. I've repeated a line of partial E's once, so we play the pattern 8 times. However, you can play it as many times as you want or need to get the pattern smooth. Here's what the pattern looks like in very slow motion. Primary, index, middle, annular, middle, index, primary, index. And then that would repeat. Here's exercise 1 being played at 80 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction. Try and play along with it if you think you're ready. Here that is again at 80 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction, so you can try and play along with it if you want to. And here that is again one last time with the 2-bar introduction at the performance speed of 95 beats per minute. Exercise 2. Practice the change between a partial E major and a partial B7. If you're not familiar with this chord change, or any of the chord changes, it's a good idea to just strum through them first until you get familiar with them before you try applying the fingerpicking pattern. When practicing strumming the chords, I wouldn't normally bother with a metronome. However, I'll play it here anyway with the metronome at 80 beats per minute and a 2-bar introduction, so you can play along with me. Right, let's bring together the chord change and the fingerpicking pattern. And I've put a repeat on the line so we can play it twice. However, you might need to keep repeating it until you get confident with it. Here it is then being played with a repeat at 80 beats per minute and a 2-bar introduction. Let's try that one last time at 80 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction. Once you're fairly happy playing the chord change with the fingerpicking pattern, you can try to bring it up to the correct speed, which is 95 beats per minute. Here it is being played at 95 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction, in case you want to try and play along with it. As usual, as you're going through the lesson, if you need more time to practice, just pause the video and go away and practice for a bit, and then you can come back later. Right, let's move on to exercise 3 now. Exercise 3. Practice the change between the partial E major and a D major. As we did with the previous exercise, I'd recommend you just strumming through these chords first before trying to apply the fingerpicking pattern to them. So here's that chord change being played 8 times with a 2-bar introduction at 80 beats per minute. Let's try those chord changes again, but this time at full speed at 95 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction. Right, let's slow the metronome beats down again to 80 beats per minute, but this time we'll introduce the finger picking pattern on top of the chord changes, and this will make it a little bit harder. Here's that line being played twice with a 2-bar introduction at 80 beats per minute, and I'll repeat the line. Here that line is again, at 80 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction. If you're struggling to get that, pause the video here and practice it for a little bit before moving on. Otherwise, let's try it again at 95 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction. Right, let's move on to the last exercise. Exercise 4, mastering line 4. This is easily the hardest line in the tune, and it's because you change a chord for every bar, and some of the chord shapes are quite hard to play, especially if you struggle with bar chords. However, it's not all bad news. If you look at the tab, you'll see you don't play the last note of the bar, and this gives you a little bit of extra time to perform the chord changes. And if you look at the last chord you play in the sequence, it's a B7. And there's two ways of playing this. You can play the bar chord if you prefer, or you can play the open chord. And there are reasons why you might want to play the bar chord even if you don't like them, and I'll explain that in a moment. Let's start by just strumming through the chord changes. You don't have to do this yet if you don't want to, but if you're confident with the chords, then go ahead. Here it is being played at 80 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction. Right, I'll just explain why you might want to play the B7 as a bar chord rather than an open chord, even if you don't like bar chords. Looking at the tab or looking at the chords, you'll see the chord before the B7 is an F sharp major partial chord. And when you create this chord, you bar the second fret. So you've already got the second fret barred. And if you compare the F sharp major with the B7th, the third finger is also in the correct position and doesn't need to be moved. So to move to the B7 is relatively easy. In fact, it's probably easier than playing the open chord. However, both methods will work, and both methods will sound more or less the same as one another. But whichever method you choose, make sure you stick with it. If you practice both methods, in effect, you're splitting your practice time in half, so you'll never get a really good chord change. Right, here's those chord changes being played through twice at 80 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction. Try and play along if you think you're ready. And here that is again at 80 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction, in case you need a little more practice. Or if you need to pause the video here again, you know what to do. Right, let's try that at full speed at 95 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction. Again, we'll play the chord sequence twice. Right, let's try that one last time at 95 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction before we add the finger picking pattern. If you're still finding those chord changes difficult, pause the video here and practice it for a while, and then you can come back to the end of the video. Or you might prefer to practice the chord changes with the finger picking pattern, in which case continue on, because we're going to go through the finger picking pattern now. If you take a closer look at line 4 and compare the finger picking patterns with the finger picking patterns on all the other lines, you'll notice that on line 4 the last note is missing. And this is a quaver rest. That will give you just a little bit more time to go between the chords. It's important to make a mental note of the different finger picking pattern in line 4. Because if you don't, you'll continue on playing the finger picking pattern you used for lines 1, 2 and 3. And if you do this, it'll make the chord changes even harder. Here's line 4 then, being played with the finger picking pattern at 80 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction. And here that is again, with a 2-bar introduction at 80 beats per minute. Try and play along with it if you think you're ready. Here's line 4 again, but this time at the full speed, 95 beats per minute, with a 2-bar introduction. And here that is again, one last time at 95 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction. Try and play along if you think you're ready. Right, let's bring the whole song together now. What you've been doing whilst you've been playing these exercises is playing each line one at a time to perfect your method. So, theoretically, you should be able to play the whole song quite easily because you've practiced each line. But before we do that, let's just take a look at line 2 and line 3. And the first thing to point out is that both lines are identical. Another thing to look at in line 2 and 3 is the last note of the line, which is an open string, where it should really be a fingered 2nd fret, which would be part of the D chord. However, by playing an open string, you can remove the D chord just slightly earlier to give you time to prepare for the next chord. And that's it. You can bring the whole tune together now. So here it is being played at 80 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction, and I'll ignore the repeats. Here that is again at 80 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction. Try and play along if you think you're ready. Right, let's bring it up to full speed. So here's the complete song without the repeats at 95 beats per minute. And here that is again, one last time, at 95 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction. Try and play along if you think you're ready. At the end of this video, I'll put a simple backing track at both 80 beats per minute and 95 beats per minute, so you can practice along with them if you want. So I'll sign out now. Thank you very much for watching, and if you're new to the channel, please do like, subscribe and hit the bell icon, and then you'll be notified when I upload new videos. And if you haven't yet got the tablature for this tune and for the guitar course, you can get it completely free at www.ebooksforguitar.com. Again, thank you very much for watching.